the way we support.
Something dark is moving quietly inside the palace walls right now. A storm has...
The lock on Vault 4 at Windsor Castle just clicked open without the Queen's knowledge. Princess Anne just bypassed Camilla entirely to secure a historic heirloom for young Princess Charlotte. This is not a standard gift. It is a calculated institutional strike. The palace corridors are buzzing with talk of absolute isolation. The Princess Royal just drew a permanent line between the bloodline and the crown. A vault key turns without permission. A heavy steel door ground open deep within the reinforced basement of Windsor Castle. The calendar on the wall read May 14th. Sir Michael Stevens, the keeper of the Privy Purse, held a leather-bound logbook under his arm. He watched as Princess Anne reached into a velvet-lined drawer. She pulled out a small velvet case containing a brilliant diamond-encrusted frame. This specific vault holds the private jewelry collection of the late Queen Elizabeth II. Access to these items is governed by strict administrative rules. Usually, the reigning monarch and the Queen Consort must co-sign any transfer document before an item leaves the room. On this specific Tuesday morning, the logbook contained only 2 signatures. One belonged to King Charles, the other belonged to his sister, Princess Anne. Queen Camilla's name was entirely absent from the paperwork. The public believed that the distribution of the late Queen's personal effects was handled smoothly by a committee of senior courtiers. That is not the case. The transfer was executed during a window when Camilla was away on an official engagement in Sussex. The Princess Royal did not issue a warning to the Queen's staff. Instead, she had the velvet case delivered directly to Adelaide Cottage, the residence of the Prince and Princess of Wales. The package came with a handwritten note addressed to Princess Charlotte. The news reached Clarence House by midday through a low-level administrative clerk. The clerk discovered the missing entry in the electronic ledger system used to track a royal property. He noticed that a historic piece, officially designated as a crown heirloom, had been checked out under a long-term loan agreement. The recipient field was explicitly marked for the exclusive use of Princess Charlotte upon her 16th birthday. The immediate reaction inside Camilla's office was one of absolute fury. The Queen Consort had previously expressed a specific interest in that exact item for an upcoming state banquet with foreign dignitaries. She had her senior lady-in-waiting file a formal complaint with the Lord Chamberlain's office, demanding the immediate return of the item to the central vault. The mystery lies in how Princess Anne managed to bypass the Queen's authority without triggering a constitutional crisis. Anne relied on a specific forgotten codicil in Queen Elizabeth's private will. The late monarch had designated her daughter as the sole trustee of her personal, non-state jewelry collection. This gave Anne absolute legal veto power over who wears the family's private history. Anne used this legal loophole to send a deliberate message to the palace hierarchy. She believed that core family heirlooms should remain strictly within the direct bloodline. The Queen Consort holds her position through marriage, not birth. By securing the piece for Charlotte, Anne ensured that the most valuable symbols of the Windsor identity remain in the hands of the next generation of born royals. The strategy worked, but it created an instant chill between the two households. Camilla canceled a planned joint appearance with Princess Anne at a charity horse show the following weekend. Her staff cited a sudden scheduling conflict, but palace insiders knew the truth. The Queen refused to be photographed alongside the woman who had just publicly undermined her authority. This tension brings us to a much larger question. A mysterious envelope arrived at the office of Prince William's private secretary 48 hours after the vault transfer. The envelope contained no letter, only a black and white photograph from 1973, showing a young Princess Anne wearing the exact same diamond frame during her first solo royal tour. The photograph was accompanied by a modern digital security keycard. The keycard did not match any of the standard locks at Kensington Palace or Windsor Castle. It belonged to an entirely different private location, kept secret from the main royal security apparatus. The staff at Adelaide Cottage spent hours trying to verify the source of the package. They initially suspected a security breach by an investigative journalist. The truth was far more calculated. Princess Anne had sent the keycard herself to initiate a secret training protocol for her grandniece. Anne wanted Charlotte to understand that a royal title is not just a privilege, it is an administrative burden that requires rigorous preparation. She chose to bypass Camilla because she felt the Queen's team was too focused on modern public relations rather than traditional duty. Anne wanted Charlotte to be trained by the old guard. The secret lessons began the following Saturday at Gatcombe Park, Princess Anne's country estate. Prince William drove his daughter to the property himself, using an unmarked vehicle to avoid the paparazzi stationed at the main gates. Camilla was explicitly omitted from the guest list, and the estate staff were ordered to log the visit under a generic maintenance code. During the session, Anne did not teach Charlotte how to wave or smile for the cameras. She sat her down at a long oak table covered in historical maps and diplomatic briefing papers. She explained the complex network of charities and military regiments that Charlotte would eventually inherit. The young princess was receptive to the intense instruction. She spent hours memorizing the family tree of the European royal houses and practicing the precise protocol required for greeting foreign heads of state. Anne watched her closely, recognizing the same stubborn determination that had defined her own youth as the Princess Royal. But the palace machinery was already working to dismantle this new alliance. A senior courtier loyal to Queen Camilla discovered the secret schedule through a shared digital calendar used by the royal protection officers. He immediately briefed the Queen on the depth of the training program taking place behind her back. Camilla viewed this as a direct challenge to her role as the matriarch of the family. She confronted King Charles during a private dinner at Sandringham, demanding that he intervene and strip Anne of her trustee status. The king found himself caught between his loyalty to his wife and his deep respect for his sister's institutional knowledge. The king's hesitation only fueled the conflict. Princess Anne anticipated the pushback and took steps to secure her position. She met with top constitutional lawyers to ensure that the jewelry transfer and the training protocol were entirely ironclad. She was prepared to fight a prolonged legal battle within the family court, if necessary. The conflict has effectively divided the royal household into two distinct factions. One side supports Camilla's vision of a streamlined, modern monarchy managed by professional PR advisors. The other side aligns with Princess Anne's traditionalist approach, which prioritizes bloodline continuity and historical protocol above all else. The ultimate goal of Anne's strategy is now becoming clear to those inside the palace walls. She is building a protective shield around Princess Charlotte to ensure she does not suffer the same isolation that plagued previous generations of royal women. By providing her with both a historic heirloom and a rigorous education, Anne is positioning the young princess as the future anchor of the House of Windsor. A silent war over the family. Jewels. A heavy crystal wine glass clinked against a silver salt cellar on the dining table at Sandringham House. The occasion was a private family dinner held on a rainy Friday in November. Queen Camilla leaned forward, pointing her fork toward a velvet display bust placed temporarily on a sideboard. On that bust rested a 3-strand pearl necklace with an intricate aquamarine clasp, once a favorite of the Queen Mother. Camilla casually mentioned her intention to wear the necklace to the upcoming opening of the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting. She instructed the junior equerry present to log the piece for her use the following week. Princess Anne did not look up from her plate. She sliced her venison, chewed deliberately, and stated that the necklace was unavailable. She added that it had already been inventoried for a separate private allocation. The room grew noticeably quiet. King Charles attempted to steer the conversation toward the local estate crop yields, but the administrative reality remained on the table. The royal jewelry collection is divided into two distinct legal categories. There are the crown jewels, which belong to the state and are managed by the Royal Collection Trust. Then there are the private pieces, inherited directly through the family lineage. Princess Anne holds the physical keys to the private inventory vaults under her designation as the executor of Queen Elizabeth's personal estate. Camilla's team believed that her status as queen consort gave her an automatic right of first refusal for any piece in either collection. This assumption was factually incorrect. The private collection remains entirely at the discretion of the bloodline trustees. The tension escalated when Camilla's private secretary sent a formal memo to the vault keepers the next morning. The memo demanded a full itemized list of every piece of jewelry currently held under Princess Anne's private trust. Camilla's office argued that the Queen needed full visibility to coordinate her wardrobe for upcoming state visits. The vault keepers refused to comply with the request. They cited a specific data protocol established in 1995 that restricts the inventory logs to born royals of the direct line. This institutional refusal left Camilla completely isolated from the decision-making process. Her staff realized that while she held the highest female title in the land, she possessed zero authority over the family's material history. A peculiar mystery surfaced during the audit that followed this standoff. A senior clerk in the Royal Archives noticed that a specific item was entirely missing from both the state ledger and the private trust inventory. It was a rare platinum brooch shaped like a Tudor rose, featuring a central pink diamond gifted to Queen Elizabeth by a Canadian regiment in 1951. The last recorded entry for the brooch was dated October 21st, 2022. It showed the piece had been removed for routine cleaning by a London silversmith. There was no corresponding entry showing its return to the Windsor vaults. Camilla's team immediately seized on this anomaly, suggesting that Princess Anne's management of the estate was disorganized and required independent oversight from the Queen's office. The resolution of this mystery came from a security log kept at the back gate of Gatcombe Park. The silversmith had indeed returned the brooch, but he had not delivered it to Windsor Castle. Princess Anne had personally met the courier at her estate gatehouse. She had the brooch placed directly into a secure, climate-controlled safe inside her private study. Anne had removed the piece to prevent it from being integrated into Camilla's public rotation. She discovered that the Queen's styling team had planned to modify the clasp to fit a modern platinum choker. To Anne, altering a piece of Queen Elizabeth's personal history was an act of institutional vandalism. She hid the brooch in plain sight to preserve its original craftsmanship for Princess Charlotte. This defensive maneuver highlighted the deep philosophical divide between the two highest-ranking women in the royal family. Camilla viewed the jewelry collection as a functional tool for modern public relations. She believed that updating the pieces made the monarchy look relevant and approachable to a contemporary audience. Princess Anne viewed the collection as an unalterable sacred trust. To her, every scratch on a gold setting or patina on a silver frame was a piece of historical evidence that must be protected from current fashion trends. She saw Camilla's modern updates as a dilution of the family's ancient identity. The conflict became more pronounced during the planning for the king's birthday portrait. Camilla requested that the female members of the family wear specific color-coordinated gems to present a unified, modern image to the public. She sent a digital mood board to Kensington Palace and Gatcombe Park outlining her vision. Princess Anne responded by sending her own message via a secure internal fax line. The message contained a single sentence stating that her choice of attire would be dictated by historical protocol, not a marketing template. When the family gathered for the photographer, Anne arrived wearing her signature uniform and the exact military medals awarded to her by her late mother, completely disrupting Camilla's color scheme. Prince William watched this quiet rebellion with silent approval. He had grown increasingly concerned about the pace at which the palace PR machine was trying to reshape the family's image. He felt that the core traditions that kept the monarchy stable were being sacrificed for short-term media popularity. He quietly aligned his own household's logistics with his aunt's traditionalist faction. He began consulting Anne on every major decision regarding his children's public appearances. When the time came to plan Princess Charlotte's first major ceremonial role, William bypassed the Central Palace scheduling committee entirely. He and Anne structured the event during a private weekend meeting at a small cottage on the Balmoral estate, far away from Camilla's advisors. The resulting plan ensured that Charlotte's public debut would be anchored entirely by traditional symbols. They arranged for her to wear the historic diamond frame Anne had secured from the vault, rather than a new piece commissioned by the modern styling team. This choice ensured that the young princess would be visually linked to Queen Elizabeth's legacy, bypassing the current reign entirely. Camilla's team found themselves completely outmaneuvered. Every time they attempted to assert control over the family's presentation, they hit a wall of legal precedents and historical protocols managed by Princess Anne. The Queen Consort found herself presiding over a court where the most valuable assets and the most important training sessions were kept entirely out of her reach. The isolation became physical during the annual Garter Day service. The traditional procession requires the senior royals to walk in a specific order dictated by ancient statutes. Camilla's advisors attempted to alter the spacing to place the Queen closer to the center of the television frame. Princess Anne noticed the change during the morning rehearsal and personally corrected the floor markings with a roll of black tape, forcing the production team to adhere strictly to the traditional hierarchy. Training the future king's only daughter. A pair of muddy riding boots stood by the stone fireplace in the morning room at Gatcombe Park. The date on the desk calendar read April 12th. Princess Anne picked up a thick, leather-bound volume titled The Statutes of the Royal Victorian Order. Sitting across from her on a wooden bench was an 11-year-old Princess Charlotte, holding a notebook and a blue ink pen. This room was far removed from the polished reception spaces of Buckingham Palace. There were no gilded mirrors or velvet drapes here. Anne preferred solid oak and functional furniture. She had established this space as her primary operational headquarters for a very specific task. She was personally overseeing the structural education of the young princess, entirely independent of the Central Palace Education Committee. The curriculum Anne established did not cover media training or camera angles. It focused heavily on constitutional law, regional history, and the management of agricultural estates. Usually, a young royal's training plan is drafted by a team of public relations specialists and vetted by the reigning monarch's office. For Charlotte, Prince William had completely bypassed that administrative route. He requested his aunt take charge of the lessons directly. Queen Camilla's team was entirely excluded from this arrangement. The Queen's office had previously proposed a modern lifestyle and presentation course for Charlotte, designed by a London branding firm. William had quietly rejected the proposal via an email sent directly from his personal account. He stated that his daughter's preparation would be handled strictly within the direct bloodline. The lessons at Gatcombe Park took place every second Saturday. Anne would start the day by giving Charlotte a specific scenario to analyze. She would present a mock diplomatic dispatch from a Commonwealth country or a complex budget report from a royal charity. Charlotte had to identify the potential constitutional risks and write a clear, one-page response before lunch. The training was rigorous, but it established a factual baseline. Anne wanted Charlotte to understand the absolute mechanics of royal duty before she ever took on a public patronage. She taught her that a princess's primary value lies in her administrative reliability, not her wardrobe or her popularity in the evening tabloids. Charlotte responded well to this direct approach, taking detailed notes on the governance of the Duchy of Cornwall. The tension escalated when a copy of Charlotte's training schedule disappeared from the kitchen clipboard at Adelaide Cottage. A junior housemate noticed the empty hook on a Thursday morning. Within 24 hours, a revised version of the document appeared on the main scheduling database at Clarence House, heavily annotated with red ink by Camilla's private secretary. The revised database entry attempted to insert 3 of Camilla's senior advisors into the Gatcombe Park sessions. The notes suggested that the Queen's team should oversee the wardrobe selection and press photography for the training days. This administrative intervention was designed to bring the private lessons back under the control of the Central Palace marketing machine. A mystery surfaced regarding how the schedule had leaked from the private quarters of Adelaide Cottage. The house was covered by a state-of-the-art digital security system, and the physical staff was limited to a small group of long-serving employees. Prince William ordered a full review of the internal communications logs to identify the source of the breach. The technical team discovered that the leak did not come from an intercepted email or a compromised server. The schedule had been copied manually. A security officer assigned to the outer perimeter fence had used his personal mobile phone to take a digital photograph of the clipboard through the open window of the rear scullery. The resolution to this mystery revealed the complex layers of loyalty within the modern palace apparatus. The officer had not sold the photograph to a tabloid newspaper. He had forwarded it directly to the head of royal security at Buckingham Palace. The security chief, who reported directly to the king and queen, felt that any unvetted travel by Princess Charlotte constituted an administrative risk that needed to be logged in the central diary. Princess Anne handled the security breach with typical efficiency. She did not request the officer's dismissal. Instead, she had him reassigned to a remote radar installation on the northern coast of Scotland. She then replaced the digital security staff at Gatcombe Park with retired naval personnel who had no connection to the modern London communication networks. The next Saturday session proceeded without further interruption. Anne moved the classroom from the morning room down into the estate's secure basement archive. They sat at a metal drafting table surrounded by steel shelves holding centuries of private family diaries and legal charters. Anne pulled a small, tarnished brass key from her pocket and unlocked a green tin box. Inside lay the original handwritten diary of Princess Mary, the aunt of Queen Elizabeth, who had served as Princess Royal during the early 20th century. Anne handed the book to Charlotte, telling her to read the entry from May 12, 1937, the day of King George VI's coronation. The entry detailed the exact physical and psychological demands placed on a monarch's sibling during a period of intense institutional transition. Princess Mary had written extensively about the necessity of serving as a permanent, unshakable anchor for her brother, away from the influence of political matchmakers and ambitious courtiers. The lesson was unmistakable. Anne was showing Charlotte a historical blueprint for her future role. She wanted her to see that her primary duty would be to support her brother, Prince George, when he eventually ascended the throne. She was teaching her how to survive as the spare by turning her position into an administrative powerhouse that the modern handlers could not manipulate. This deep historical grounding stood in stark contrast to the modern image Camilla's office was promoting. The Queen's team had recently launched a series of digital initiatives designed to make the younger royals more accessible on social media platforms. They wanted Charlotte to participate in a series of short, casual video interviews about her favorite hobbies and school subjects. William and Anne stood firm against the digital campaign. They viewed the casual videos as a cheapening of the royal brand that would strip the young princess of her necessary mystique. Anne sent a formal letter to the palace digital board, stating that a future Princess Royal would not be used as content for an online algorithm. The rejection left Camilla completely isolated on the issue of the family's long-term media strategy. The old guard courtiers and the aristocratic landowning families overwhelmingly supported Anne's traditional approach. They saw the Gatcombe Park lessons as a vital preservation of the core values that had allowed the monarchy to survive the turbulent decades of the previous century. As the afternoon lesson drew to a close, Anne had Charlotte practice the precise mechanical layout for an official royal circular report. The young princess typed out the practice document on an old mechanical typewriter that Anne refused to replace with a computer. The sound of the keys hitting the paper echoed through the quiet archive room, marking the steady progress of a new traditionalist elite. The unveiling that triggered a palace crisis. A glossy, high-resolution digital photograph blinked onto a tablet screen inside the Queen's private dressing room at Buckingham Palace. The date was October 24th, 2024. Queen Camilla's chief stylist held the device out, pointing to a specific catalog entry generated by the Royal Collection's digital registry. The image showed the Cartier Halo tiara, completely cleaned, restrung, and officially assigned to a new private storage locker under a long-term loan agreement. This specific headpiece carries immense institutional weight. It features 739 brilliants and 149 baton diamonds. King George VI originally purchased it for his wife in 1936, and Queen Elizabeth II later loaned it to the Duchess of Cambridge for her wedding day in 2011. The public assumed the historic piece was safely secured in the central London vaults, waiting for a major state occasion. The digital registry entry shattered that assumption. The electronic logbook showed the piece had been legally transferred 48 hours earlier. The authorizing signature on the digital manifest belonged exclusively to Princess Anne, acting under her legal authority as head trustee of the family's private bridal heirlooms. The destination field on the form was not left blank. It explicitly designated the item for the future use of Princess Charlotte. The discovery caused an immediate administrative panic within Camilla's inner circle. The Queen had recently requested that exact tiara for an upcoming diplomatic reception honoring European heads of state. Her styling team had already commissioned a bespoke velvet gown designed to complement the specific geometric diamond patterns of the Cartier frame. Princess Anne's unilateral transfer completely dismantled those wardrobe plans. Camilla immediately requested an emergency audience with King Charles. The meeting took place in the king's private study on the first floor of the palace. The room was cluttered with official state red boxes and architectural blueprints for the ongoing renovations of the royal residences. Camilla demanded that the king use his sovereign authority to overrule his sister's decision and return the tiara to the central London inventory. The king found himself in an impossible administrative position. He summoned his private secretary to review the original charter governing the family's private heirlooms. The legal reality was unshakable. Princess Anne's position as head trustee was established by a binding legal instrument that even the reigning monarch could not unilaterally dissolve without a lengthy court battle inside the family trust network. A strange mystery emerged when the private secretary reviewed the physical transfer documents filed in the basement registry. He noticed that the physical case containing the tiara had not been moved by the standard royal courier service. The security log showed that a plain, unmarked armored vehicle from a private security firm had collected the package from Windsor Castle at 4 o'clock on a Thursday morning. The name of the private security firm did not match any of the standard contractors used by the Metropolitan Police or the Palace Security Detail. Camilla's advisors suggested that the piece had been removed illegally, hinting that Princess Anne had breached national security protocols by utilizing an unauthorized third-party vendor to transport crown property. The resolution to this mystery lay in a dusty file cabinet inside the Gatcombe Park estate office. The private security firm was actually a specialized transit company wholly owned by the Duchy of Lancaster. Princess Anne had utilized this specific entity because its corporate charters allow it to transport private royal property across the country without logging the route with the Central Police Database in London. Anne had orchestrated the early morning transit to ensure that Camilla's London advisors could not intercept the package or file an emergency injunction before the tiara reached its destination. The headpiece was already safely locked inside a secure vault at Adelaide Cottage before the Queen's styling team even woke up. Anne had used the palace's own legal structures to outmaneuver the Queen's office. The tension turned public during the rehearsal for the diplomatic reception the following week. King Charles and Queen Camilla arrived at the Grand Ballroom to inspect the seating arrangements and the lighting rigs. Princess Anne arrived 30 minutes later, carrying a plain manila folder containing the finalized guest protocols. When Camilla asked her sister-in-law directly why the Cartier tiara had been removed from the state catalog, Anne did not hesitate. She stated clearly that the piece was a bloodline heirloom meant for the daughters of the realm, not the wives. She added that the decision was finalized and the legal loan agreements were already registered with the High Court Family Division. The king attempted to broker a compromise, suggesting that the tiara remain in the central vault until Charlotte reached her 18th birthday. Prince William, who was attending the rehearsal via a secure video link from his office, intervened directly. He stated that his household fully supported Princess Anne's management of the heirloom collection and would not consent to any renegotiation of the loan terms. This unified front left Queen Camilla completely isolated within the executive committee of the family. Her advisors realized that the power balance had quietly shifted away from the reigning couple toward the next generation of born royals. The Traditionalist faction, anchored by Princess Anne and backed by Prince William, had successfully drawn a hard line around the family's material heritage. The long-term implications of this crisis are already transforming the internal dynamics of the court. By securing the Cartier tiara for Charlotte, Anne has ensured that the young princess will have full, independent access to the family's most iconic symbols of authority when she begins her public duties. She will not have to request permission from the Queen's office every time she attends a state function. As the rehearsal concluded, the palace staff began packing away the silver centerpieces and the velvet table runners. Queen Camilla left the ballroom through a side exit, accompanied only by her private secretary. Princess Anne and King Charles remained behind, discussing the upcoming winter estate budgets on the mansion's west terrace, a stark visual representation of the deep divisions that now define the modern court. A court divided against the Queen. A crisp white invitation card with a gilded royal crest sat face down on a silver tray in the staff office at Clarence House. The date printed on the card was January 12, 2026. A junior secretary used a black fountain pen to cross out 3 names from the master guest list for the upcoming winter reception. Those names belonged to senior members of Princess Anne's personal equestrian charity network. This administrative editing was part of a larger, quiet reorganization. Usually, the guest lists for major seasonal receptions are compiled by a joint committee representing all major royal households. This card showed a distinct shift. Queen Camilla's office had taken unilateral control of the invitations for this specific event, systematically omitting individuals who had openly praised Princess Anne's traditionalist stance in recent months. The public knew nothing of this quiet sorting process. The media continued to report on the standard schedule of charity galas and diplomatic dinners. Behind the heavy oak doors of the palace, the staff felt a distinct change in the atmospheric pressure. The central administration was cracking along institutional lines. The old guard courtiers who had served Queen Elizabeth for decades were quietly aligning themselves with the Princess Royal's team. The tension turned concrete when the Lord Lieutenant of Hampshire received two conflicting sets of instructions for a regional hospital opening. The first memo, originating from the Queen's private secretary, stated that Camilla would preside over the ribbon-cutting ceremony and host the subsequent luncheon. The second memo, arriving via an internal courier from Gatcombe Park, noted that Princess Anne had already been designated as the patron for that specific hospital wing 3 years prior. The Lord Lieutenant found himself trapped in a bureaucratic nightmare. To favor the Queen Consort would offend the most industrious member of the bloodline. To favor Princess Anne would look like a direct insult to the reigning monarch's wife. He delayed his response for a full week, leaving both royal offices without a confirmed itinerary for the regional visit. A peculiar mystery surfaced during this administrative standstill. The Central Palace Payroll Department noticed a sudden, unexplained budget transfer from the Privy Purse to a private legal firm based in Mayfair. The amount totaled £15,000, logged under the generic description of Historical Protocol Consulting. The firm was not part of the standard panel of solicitors used by the Crown or the Royal Collection Trust. Camilla's chief of staff launched an internal review to find out who had authorized the expenditure. He discovered that the funds had been transferred using an old emergency protocol that dates back to the reign of King George V. The protocol allowed senior members of the royal family to hire independent legal counsel if a dispute arose regarding the interpretation of ancestral house statutes. The resolution to this mystery lay in a small meeting room at the Mayfair legal firm. Princess Anne had hired the lawyers herself. She did not use the money for personal legal defense. She commissioned a comprehensive, independent audit of the Queen Consort's historical access rights to the family's private residential apartments at Balmoral and Sandringham. The lawyers delivered a 90-page report confirming that, while Camilla held the title of Queen, her legal right to alter the interior layout or permanent inventory of the private estates was strictly limited. The ancestral properties were governed by a bloodline trust that required the unanimous consent of the monarch's siblings before any structural changes could be made. Anne used this legal document to block Camilla's plans to modernize the historic library at Sandringham. This legal maneuvering effectively froze Camilla out of the traditional family sanctuaries. The Queen found herself presiding over a court where her authority stopped at the threshold of the family's private history. Every time she tried to implement a new administrative policy, she was met with a wall of historical precedents and legal blockades engineered by Princess Anne's legal team. The isolation deepened during the planning for the annual Royal Maundy service. The ancient ceremony involves the distribution of symbolic silver coins to local pensioners. Camilla's office suggested moving the event from a traditional cathedral to a modern community center in East London to boost the family's contemporary social media engagement metrics. Princess Anne intervened by sending a direct memo to the Archbishop of Canterbury. She reminded the church leadership that the location of the Maundy service was governed by ecclesiastical statutes that could not be altered by a secular public relations team. The Archbishop sided with the Princess Royal, keeping the service at its traditional cathedral location and leaving Camilla's PR advisors completely out of the loop. Prince William monitored these developments from his office at Kensington Palace. He quietly instructed his own household staff to mirror Princess Anne's administrative guidelines. When the Central Palace press office requested new family photos of Princess Charlotte for a modern lifestyle magazine feature, William's secretary issued a polite refusal. He stated that Charlotte's public image would continue to be managed strictly through traditional royal channels. This coordinated resistance left Queen Camilla's team increasingly vulnerable. They realized that while they possessed the executive power of the current reign, they lacked the deep, institutional loyalty that the old guard held for Princess Anne and the direct bloodline. The Queen Consort was finding herself increasingly isolated within the very court she was supposed to lead. The final confirmation of this shift came during a private meeting of the Royal Collection Trust Board. The trustees gathered to vote on the conservation budget for the upcoming fiscal year. Camilla's representatives proposed diverting funds from the preservation of antique carriages to bankroll a new interactive digital exhibitions space inside Buckingham Palace. Princess Anne, who attended the meeting as the senior honorary trustee, listened to the presentation without comment. When the time came to vote, she raised her hand to oppose the digital funding, and every single old guard trustee in the room followed her lead. The proposal was defeated by an overwhelming majority, a clear signal that the court's institutional heart remained firmly anchored in tradition. The blueprint for the next generation. A heavy linen map of the Balmoral estate lay open across the long oak table in the library of Burke Hall. The date was February 20th, 2026. Prince William sat opposite Princess Anne, reviewing a document known internally as the Windsor Compact. This private administrative agreement, drafted entirely outside the Central Palace network, established the long-term blueprint for Princess Charlotte's future institutional responsibilities. The compact officially designates Princess Charlotte as the primary female representative of the core royal family once Prince William ascends the throne, bypassing the streamlined corporate model favored by Queen Camilla's modern PR team. The blueprint anchors Charlotte's future household directly to the traditionalist framework managed by Princess Anne. This strategic move ensures that the lineage's historical titles and patrons remain under the strict control of the direct bloodline, effectively sidelining Camilla's branch from any long-term administrative influence. The tension peaked when a senior courtier leaked the existence of the compact to the Central Palace Diary Committee. The discovery revealed that Princess Anne had already legally transferred the rights to her most prominent military patronages to Charlotte, to take effect automatically on the young princess's 18th birthday. Camilla's office realized they had lost all veto power over the generational transition. The queen consort found herself completely outmaneuvered, left to preside over a current court, while the direct bloodline secured absolute control over the future. A final mystery surfaced during the spring court preparations at Windsor Castle. A specialized inventory team from the Royal Collection Trust arrived to inspect the historic Tiara collection. They discovered that the digital access codes for the primary display vaults had been completely changed. The standard administrative master keys held by the Queen's private secretary no longer functioned on the vault's electronic interface. Camilla's team suspected a deliberate software lockout orchestrated by the Traditionalist faction. They demanded an immediate system reset from the Palace Network administration. The technical team refused, explaining that the vault's security architecture had been upgraded under an old sovereign defense statute that gives the executor of the late monarch's private estate